Because of a perfect 100% compatibility match, my parents sent me to Johnny's bed. Johnny hates being manipulated more than anything. The next morning, I woke up to see him sitting at the edge of the bed. He threw a stack of papers at me. 3 years. Don't get greedy. I swallowed my excuses, along with my love for him. I quietly played the role of his pacifier for 3 years, never once crossing the line. The day our contract ended, I quietly packed my things and fled the country. But Johnny hunted me down, traveling halfway across the world to catch me. His expression was furious, his voice ice cold. The 3 years are up, so you just run? When I woke up, the first thing I saw was Johnny sitting by the bed. The only light was a single bedside lamp, casting shadows on the side of his face. His profile was still sharp, but he looked exhausted, like he hadn't slept all night. The messy sheets made the memories of last night explode in my mind. Last night, Johnny's rut hit, and my parents used that window to shove me into his room. An alpha's physical dominance is no joke. The sheer pressure of his pheromones was suffocating. I just curled up on the floor by the door. Pheromones broadcast their owner's emotions. Johnny's were clearly telling me he didn't want this. Johnny's scent is cedarwood, while mine is just a cheap, fresh grass smell. I don't understand how a top-tier alpha like Johnny could have a 100% match with a low-grade omega like me. Even our scents clash. But, seeing the pain on his face, I still went to him without a second thought. Johnny has a pheromone disorder. His ruts are 100 times more painful than a normal alpha's. I couldn't stand to see him suffer. As I got closer, Johnny's eyes snapped open. His forehead was covered in a cold sweat. His lips were pale, and his gaze was hazy, but still freezing. He told me, "Get out now, buy me a suppressant and I'll forget this happened." I ignored him, slowly placing my hand on his leg. The damp scent of fresh grass tangled with the dark cedarwood, slowly blending until they were indistinguishable. The next second, a powerful force yanked me forward, and I was pulled into a chaotic wave. The door had been locked from the outside long ago. There were even people guarding it. I couldn't bear his pain, but more importantly, I had selfish reasons. A wish I'd held for years was coming true. I knew how pathetic I was. I hadn't even had a chance to savor the joy of getting my wish when Johnny, seeming to notice my gaze, turned over. The next moment, he grabbed a stack of papers and threw them at me. The pages scattered like snowflakes, but I could see the large words on the cover sheet. A marriage contract and divorce papers. 2 copies of each. Johnny had already defined the entire situation and decided on his response. 3 years. Don't get greedy. I looked up and met his disgusted gaze. He saw my eyes lingering on the divorce papers and scoffed. What 3 years isn't enough for? You? His look stung me. No, Johnny. Do you remember me? You helped me once. Johnny cut me off impatiently. So, you repay my kindness by scheming your way into my bed? His brows were tightly furrowed in disgust. I suddenly realized how weak my excuses sounded. If I said I knew nothing about this, would he even believe me? So I shut my mouth. I swallowed all my explanations, along with all my love for him. I didn't even read the terms of the agreement. I just flipped to the last page and signed my name. As Johnny finally left, he stared at me for a long moment and left one last sentence. We stay out of each other's way. Don't expect anything more. Then he turned and walked out. My marriage to Johnny was a rush job. We didn't even have a reception. When we got the marriage certificate, I looked at our photo. There was so much space between us. Even though the photographer kept saying closer, closer, we still ended up with this gap. Even in the picture, Johnny was frowning slightly. We didn't look like newlyweds, we looked like 2 strangers. On the way back, Johnny drove. After hesitating for a long time, I sat in the back seat. Are you moving in? Johnny's voice was casual, like he didn't really care. But I shamelessly said yes. His eyes flickered to me in the rearview mirror. It was so fast I couldn't tell if he was mocking me. But if I didn't move in with Johnny, I had nowhere else to go. I didn't have much stuff. It barely filled half a suitcase. He dropped me off at a villa and left. For the next 2 weeks, I didn't see him again. Every day, I cleaned the house spotless and cooked dinner for 2. I'd push lunch from noon to 1 and dinner from 6 to 7. I was just afraid that one day Johnny would come home and I wouldn't have food ready for him. Until one day, I saw a paparazzi photo of Johnny leaving a different apartment complex. It was only then I realized that, of course, Johnny didn't just own this one property. He had just dumped me in one of his random houses. I looked up the distance between my neighborhood and his. South side to north side. A long, straight line so long it wouldn't even fit on my phone screen. I suddenly realized that even though I was now legally the closest person to Johnny, I was just as far away from him as I was 10 years ago. The first time I met Johnny, it was a total cliché. Southside High had a bad reputation. Getting cornered by thugs wasn't exactly rare. I was always careful, but that day my head was fuzzy and I felt hot. I had a bad feeling and decided to take a shortcut home. I took one step around the corner and saw a group of guys with piercings, smoking. My first instinct was to run. I didn't get far before they caught up. One of them kicked the back of my knee, grabbed my hair, and spat. "Where you running, pretty boy?" My head was spinning. I was covered in a cold sweat, but my whole body felt like it was on fire. The guy's expression turned weird. He laughed to his friends. An omega in heat? Damn. His nose got close to the back of my neck. I struggled desperately, and in the chaos, I managed to slap him across the face. He flew into a rage and kicked me hard in the stomach. A low-grade omega stinking of grass. What gives you the right to act so high and mighty? My stomach churned in agony, and my vision blurred. But a deafening roar, growing closer, snapped me back to my senses. I forced my eyes open. A red sports car had stopped at the mouth of the alley. A guy with red-streaked hair got out, talking excitedly to the person behind him. "Don't worry, man, Northside Prep is miles away. Your parents will never find you here." My gaze fell on the person he was talking to. He had a strong brow, a straight nose, and dark, intense eyes. His lips were pressed into a thin line, and he was dressed simply in black. He ignored the other guy's words. He seemed to sense something and looked right at me. The moment our eyes met, my heart skipped, and I instinctively looked away. The thug in front of me was still yelling, but all I could hear were footsteps getting closer on the pavement. The footsteps stopped right next to me. I heard a low, annoyed voice. "Move." The alley was narrow, barely wide enough for 2 people. I was blocking his path. I kept my head down and tried to shrink back, my thin shoulders pressing against the rough brick wall. I didn't hear anything for a long moment. I carefully peeked up and met his eyes again. He glanced at me, then turned to the thug. "I was talking to you." Everything after that is a blur. I only remember that after it was all over, a trace of dark cedarwood cut through the overwhelming smell of grass in the air. Grasping at that tiny bit of relief, I instinctively reached out and grabbed his sleeve. "Can you help me?" When I woke up again, I was in the hospital. The doctor told me I had presented as an omega. There was something hard digging into my palm. I looked down. It was a black cufflink. Later, I found out his name was Johnny, as in one of the Johnnies. Northside Prep and Southside High, one on the north side of the city, one on the south. If he hadn't been there on a whim that day, we would have been 2 parallel lines, never destined to cross. I'd given up hoping he would ever come back. But Johnny showed up suddenly on a rainy night. His shoulders were damp, but he was still wearing a crisp black shirt. I instinctively glanced at his sleeves, then realized how ridiculous I was. The villa was huge and cold. I was well aware of my status as a guest and didn't dare add any personal touches to the rooms. Johnny frowned but didn't say anything. He sat across from me. It was a long time before he finally spoke. "I've taken care of your parents' situation." My mind went blank. What situation with my parents? He frowned. "You didn't know?" It was a simple question, no particular tone, but I didn't dare deny it. In Johnny's eyes, my parents and I were in the same boat. Blood ties aren't easily cut. So I stayed silent. The truth was, even if he didn't say, I could guess what it was. When they schemed to get me into his bed, it was all for one of 2 things. Fame or money. They didn't get the fame, so they must have settled for the money. Whatever scraps the Johnny family offered them would be enough to set them up for life. In the end, all I could manage to say was, "I'm sorry." Johnny scoffed. He didn't say anything, but my face burned as if he'd slapped me. "But I'm not a charity," he said. "I expect something in return." Johnny leaned forward, steepling his fingers under his chin. His eyes were hidden in the shadows, making his expression unreadable. The gland on my neck began to throb. The scent of fresh grass slowly seeped out. The familiar discomfort made me realize my heat was starting. A shameful wetness began to spread, and my gland ached. A marked omega becomes dependent on their alpha's soothing pheromones. The one person who could soothe me was 5 steps away, but all I could picture was the way Johnny looked at me, frowning, filled with annoyance and distance. The smell of grass in the room grew stronger, but my body felt colder and colder. Another coincidence. It was almost enough to make me believe I'd planned this. I tasted salt as I bit my lip, forcing myself to stay clear-headed. If the first time was unavoidable because of the guards at the door, this time I had no excuse for my pathetic need. I didn't dare look at him, but I could feel his gaze on me like needles, slowly shredding what little dignity I had left. Even with a 100% match, even during his rut, he had never lost control. Even at the peak of passion, Johnny remained terrifyingly lucid, refusing to even give me a temporary mark. The room was overflowing with his soothing pheromones, but I was still sobbing, tears streaming down my face. Johnny asked me why I was crying so hard. I just felt that after this night, we would have nothing to do with each other ever again. But I couldn't say that. So I just looked at him with red eyes and begged, "Johnny, please, can you just mark me? It hurts." Johnny was silent for a long time, so long the atmosphere in the room turned cold. He finally bent his head. His teeth pierced my gland, and the pain made me break out in a cold sweat. Felt like a punishment. My mind must have been fuzzy then. I'd forgotten that Johnny is actually a very responsible person. Asking him for a mark was no different from asking him to take responsibility for me. Which is why, the next day, Johnny threw a stack of contracts at me. Johnny had always been a kind and rational person. His rationality was constant, and his kindness was given equally to everyone. I'd seen him build a shelter for a stray cat in the rain. I'd seen him shield a female classmate who was having an embarrassing period moment, handing her his jacket. He'd even helped me, a total stranger. But now, as a low-grade omega who had schemed his way into a wealthy family, I was clearly worse than a stranger. "Where are your suppressants?" Johnny's voice was cold and distant, completely flat. I suddenly remembered, because I'd presented so late, my gland was sensitive and special. I'd always used a custom-made suppressant my family got for me, and I'd just used the last batch. The new one hadn't arrived yet. I just shook my head, not even daring to look up, afraid to see the contempt and disgust in his eyes again. The pain in my gland intensified. My vision was blurring. Johnny said something, but I couldn't hear him. His voice sounded so far away, yet right next to me. An omega who has been marked by an alpha, if they don't get soothed during their heat, it can cause irreversible damage to their gland. I thought fuzzily, what goes around comes around. This is what I get. Through my blurry vision, I saw Johnny stand up from the sofa and walk over to me. He lifted my chin. His thumb was rough as it wiped my face, pressing hard enough to leave a red mark. His teeth sank into my gland. A sharp pain shot through me, and I whimpered, clutching his shirt. The smell of grass faded, and the scent of cedarwood wrapped around me, warm and comforting as a hot bath. "Evan, I can solve your parents' problem. You help me get through my ruts. We're even. A clean transaction." After that night, I moved into Johnny's neighborhood. Again, just half a suitcase. Johnny looked surprised. "This is all you have?" I nodded and dutifully got into the back seat. The place Johnny lived was even bigger than the last house. He told me to pick any room. I didn't hesitate, choosing one at the very end of the hall, the farthest one from the master bedroom. There was a live-in housekeeper, so I didn't need to cook or clean. Now, even the little things I used to do to pass the time were taken away. My only remaining hobby was sitting in the bay window, waiting for the 22nd hour of the day to arrive. I had a selfish reason for picking this room. The bay window looked directly out onto the main gate. Johnny was punctual. Every day at 10 p.m., his car would appear at the gate. My eyes would follow the car, looking through the window and the car's windshield to catch a glimpse of his face, all the way from the gate to the garage. This was, predictably, the longest interaction we'd have all day. Until one day, Johnny came home early, which never happened. I was curled up on the sofa watching TV, wearing a Pikachu onesie, when he walked in. Our eyes met. I was so embarrassed I scrambled to run upstairs, not even bothering to put on shoes. Johnny called out to me, "You don't have to hide from me." I turned around and came face to face with a pair of big, round eyes peeking out from behind him. "This is my nephew. He'll be staying here for a while." Before he could say another word, I quickly promised, "I'll take good care of him." He didn't say anything, but the kid, who had been hiding behind him and clutching his shirt, stared at me with bright eyes. Or, to be precise, he was staring at my clothes. Kids are simple. Thanks to one Pikachu onesie, Leo and I became fast friends. We'd curl up on the sofa together and watch TV. He always picked his favorite show, Super Wings. Leo was engrossed, and honestly, so was I. I got an ice cream bar from the kitchen. After 2 bites, I noticed Leo practically drooling, his eyes glued to it. I hesitated. "Are you allowed to have ice cream?" Leo nodded frantically, so I went and got one for him. He must have decided we were now best buds because he scooted closer. "Evan, what's your relationship with my uncle?" I looked at Leo's curious eyes and thought for a second. "I'm his tenant." It was the truth. In this house, I was no different from a renter. He looked confused. "But my uncle doesn't need money." I puffed out my chest proudly and wagged a finger. "What I pay him is something money can't buy." Leo's mouth formed an O. "Wow, Evan, you're so cool." "Okay, Leo, you asked me a question, so I get to ask you one. What's your uncle's type?" My heart was pounding. Johnny wasn't even home, but I was as nervous as if I'd been caught doing something wrong, my palms sweating. Leo thought about it like a little adult, then started listing things off. Long hair, big eyes, likes to wear red dresses and black high heels. The description was getting very specific. I was pretty sure this was a real person. I asked cautiously, "Who is this person?" Leo replied, "It's Sophia, of course. My uncle's fiancée." I had no idea. Johnny had an arranged marriage, and I definitely didn't know he liked his fiancée. "What are you two talking about?" Johnny's voice was cold and close, thick with displeasure. My back went rigid. I gripped the hem of my pajamas. Leo was clearly terrified by Johnny's expression. His smile vanished, his face went pale, and he started sweating. This was not a normal reaction. I forgot about Johnny and rushed over to him. "Leo, what's wrong?" My tummy hurts." Leo's voice was weak, his face scrunched up in pain. Johnny had a house doctor on call. The doctor arrived quickly, ran some checks, and asked, "Did he eat anything unusual tonight?" I was about to shake my head, but then I remembered the ice cream. I gave him an ice cream bar. Before the doctor could even speak, Johnny's voice cut through, sharp and angry. "He has a sensitive stomach. Why would you give him ice cream?" My face drained of color. I had no defense. I had just promised to take care of Leo, and now I'd made him sick. His gaze was like a frozen blade, stabbing right at me. "Evan, whatever your goal was, you've achieved it. Stop pulling these extra stunts. Especially not on the people around me." Johnny despises manipulation. In his mind, everything I did was obviously part of a plot, maybe even a malicious trap. I knew he wasn't just talking about Leo. He was talking about his ex-fiancée. A bitter taste filled my mouth. I nodded at him and whispered, "Okay." Leo must have recovered, but I didn't see him. Much after that, I started staying in my room, only coming out for meals. I planted a pothose vine in the screen of my bay window. The pothose grew well. I tended to it carefully, and my eyes no longer drifted to the gate at 10 p.m. to see if it would open. I gave myself a deadline. When the pot hose covered the entire window frame, when I could no longer see Johnny's car return, I would be able to let him go. Half a month later, Leo snuck up to my room. "Evan, I already explained to my uncle. He knows the truth. I'm sorry you got blamed." Leo's face was still a little pale. He looked at me pitifully, clutching a stuffed animal. He shoved the toy into my hands, looking like it pained him to give it up. "This is my favorite. I sleep with it every night. It's for you, so please don't be mad at me. Don't ignore me." I had to laugh. "I'm not mad at you." Leo looked anxious. "Really? Then why don't you come downstairs and watch TV with me anymore?" I didn't know how to answer him. Leo slowly shuffled closer. "Actually, Uncle knows he was wrong too. He really regrets it. I secretly saw him on the balcony the night he found out. He was out there smoking for like half the night." I smiled and ruffled his hair. "You should be sleeping at night, not spying on people." Leo flopped onto me dramatically. He was too smart for his own good. "I haven't been sleeping well. I was so worried you were mad. Come on. Come watch cartoons with me. If you don't, I'll know you're still mad." I couldn't win against him, so I went and sat on the sofa to watch cartoons. But I kept one eye on the clock. The second the hand hit 10, I was going back to my room. But today, Johnny's punctuality failed. He walked in the door at 9:06 p.m. By the time I heard his footsteps, it was too late to run. Leo, thinking he was being subtle, tried to hide me with his body and make shushing faces. I suddenly understood what this little and large duo had been plotting. A moment later, Johnny's voice came from behind me. "I'm sorry, Evan. I misunderstood you." He seemed uncomfortable apologizing and quickly changed the subject. "There's a family dinner tomorrow. I left some clothes for you. I'll pick you up in the afternoon." It was my first time at a Johnny family dinner. I was so nervous I felt sick. Right before we walked in, I suddenly felt a warm hand close around mine. I looked up in surprise at Johnny's profile. His voice was low and casual. "It's just for show. Don't be nervous." My little flicker of happiness vanished the moment I saw her. Long hair, big eyes, a red dress, black high heels. A beautiful, striking woman. Johnny's intended fiancée. She was standing next to Johnny's grandfather, chatting and laughing with him like she'd known him forever. When she looked over at me, her eyes flashed with surprise. The second before our eyes met, I instinctively ripped my hand out of Johnny's. Ignoring his confused look, I hurried away. "I'm sorry, I don't feel well." I stood on the terrace for a while, letting the wind cool me down. Just as I was about to go back inside, I heard a woman's voice behind me. "It's exhausting, isn't it?" It was Sophia. She came and stood next to me, holding a slim cigarette. "Want one?" I shook my head. She huddled her shoulders. The night air was cold, and she was shivering. I took off my suit jacket and draped it over her. She looked surprised again, then smiled. "You know who I am, right? You're not afraid I'm here to declare war?" Before I could answer, she continued, "Relax. I'm coming to you as sister-in-law." "Sister-in-law?" I frowned, confused. "It's all an arranged marriage anyway. If I can't marry Johnny, I'll just marry his brother." "It's all the same," she shrugged, acting like it was nothing. "It's not the same," I thought. "At least not for Johnny." As if she could read my mind, she smiled. "It's the same for Johnny, too. There was nothing between us. Fundamentally, you and I are the same type of person. But I am surprised he chose you." She looked me up and down, like she was appraising a piece of merchandise. Suddenly, she seemed to realize something. "You like him, don't you?" It wasn't a question. It was a statement. She didn't need my answer, just kept talking. "Johnny really is gentle when he wants to be. But the gentle ones are often the most ruthless. I hope you get what you want, Evan." With that, Sophia left. The night chill started to seep through my thin shirt. I heard footsteps behind me. Even without turning, I knew it was Johnny. He stopped beside me, his voice flat. "What did you talk about?" I almost laughed. He really didn't need to be this paranoid about me. "Nothing. You can ask her if you don't believe me." I didn't wait to see his expression. I just turned and went inside. The days passed. I rarely saw Johnny, but I got closer and closer to Leo. Maybe because he saw how well Leo and I got along, Johnny's attitude toward me became polite. On the few occasions my heat came, I would fall into a deep sleep after he marked me. When I woke up, I'd still be in his big bed. Johnny would be sitting on the sofa, rubbing his temples. You're exhausted. If you feel that bad in the future, don't try to force it. A newly marked Omega is extremely dependent on their alpha. Thanks to him, I'd slept well. I glanced at the wall clock. Only 2 hours had passed. But even 2 hours was crossing a line. I was very aware of our relationship. This wasn't part of the contract. I apologized. Sorry, it won't happen again. Johnny's hand paused, but he didn't reply. I went back to my room. I had just gotten out of the shower when I saw a small lump under my covers. I lifted the blanket. It was Leo. A loud clap of thunder rattled the house, and the kid flinched, instinctively grabbing my waist. Evan, I'm scared. Johnny had told me Leo was from a less favored branch of the family. His mother had died young, and his father didn't care about him. I held him tight, trying to release soothing pheromones, and gently patted his back. It's okay. I'm right here. Go to sleep. It was fine at first, but the storm outside wasn't stopping. It was getting worse. Leo clutched my shirt, trembling with fear, his back soaked in a cold sweat. His color was getting worse, and I was frantic, not knowing what to do. I did a quick search online. It said a child would feel safest with their alpha parent or guardian. I brushed Leo's damp hair off his forehead. Leo, let's go find your uncle. Okay? When Johnny opened the door, his room was dark except for a single bedside lamp. He had clearly already been asleep. He was wearing the same black silk pajamas. Looking down at Leo, who was holding my hand and hiding behind me. It was strange. Johnny and Leo were blood relatives, but Leo always seemed more attached to me. I quickly explained the situation. Johnny nodded. Come in. Leo, still holding my hand, started to walk in. He tugged on my hand when he saw me standing still. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I pulled my hand back. Go on, Leo. Leo's foot, which had just stepped forward, pulled back. His big eyes were watery from crying, looking pitiful. Evan, aren't you coming? He sniffled. Johnny turned to look at me. He seems very attached to you. I steeled myself. I don't want to intrude. I turned to leave. Another huge crash of thunder echoed, making even me jump. I immediately heard a muffled sob from behind me. I took a few steps, but I couldn't stop myself. I turned back and scooped Leo into my arms. Looking at his pale, terrified face, I couldn't hold back my frustration. I snapped at Johnny, you should be releasing some calming pheromones for him. A kid needs to be around an alpha guardian to feel safe. Sorry, I don't have much experience with this, Johnny said. As soon as the words were out, a huge wave of his pheromones filled the air. My knees buckled, and I almost fell. Leo, predictably, calmed down a lot, but he still clutched my shirt. Evan, please stay with me? I hesitated, and my eyes met Johnny's. We looked at each other for a long moment before he suddenly spoke. You're not intruding. It took me a second to realize he was answering my earlier comment. Leo's hand was still clamped onto my shirt. I sighed, defeated. I carried my pillow and blanket to the sofa in Johnny's room, but he stopped me. You sleep on the bed. I'll take the sofa. After arguing and losing, I obediently got on the bed. But once I was there, another problem emerged. The sofa was too far from the bed. The soothing pheromones were too faint. Leo tossed and turned, unable to settle, and my own gland started to throb. The faint scent was worse than nothing, like an itch I couldn't scratch. Leo turned to face me. Evan, I'm still scared. I looked over at Johnny on the sofa. A man his size, well over 6 feet, was crammed onto it, his legs dangling off the end. He looked miserable. Johnny, I called softly. What's wrong? He answered immediately, his eyes clear. He hadn't been asleep at all. I gathered my pillow and blanket. You should sleep here. You're too far away. Leo can't settle. Johnny walked over and put his hand over mine, stopping me. He was too close, his body heat and the strong scent of his pheromones washing over me. You sleep on the other side. Leo can sleep in the middle. You don't have to worry about me doing anything. Hearing this, Leo snatched the blankets from me and flopped onto the bed, patting the mattress and looking at me with bright eyes. Fine. I gave in again. But the next morning, I woke up to a very different scene. I opened my eyes and was staring directly at the belt of Johnny's black robe. I froze for a second, my hand, which was wrapped around his waist, instinctively tightening. Johnny's fingers stopped tapping on his laptop. You're awake? I yanked my hand back and looked around. Leo was gone. Where's Leo? He woke up early. Went to do his homework. I kept my head down, trying to hide my embarrassment. Sorry, you could have woken me up. You were exhausted yesterday. It's fine to rest. I nodded, grabbed all my things and fled back to my room. But it was a stormy summer. Every 2 or 3 days, Leo would come find me, and I'd have to take him back to Johnny. Eventually, Johnny just kept a spare set of pillows and blankets in his room. For me. And I gradually got used to waking up in Johnny's arms every morning. Because Johnny was busy with work, I was the one who went to Leo's parent-teacher conference. After it was over, I got a call from Johnny. Saw his car at the school gate. Johnny got out and crossed the street toward us. One of Leo's classmates' moms saw him and nudged me. Evan, your husband is so handsome. Johnny was close enough to hear her. His eyes flicked to the woman. My heart leaped, and I was about to deny it, but Johnny spoke first. Thank you. On the way home, Johnny said to me, you've seemed tired lately, and your appetite is off. I called the doctor to come take a look at you. I nodded, surprised he'd noticed something so small. Even though Johnny and I were rarely intimate and I had no signs of pregnancy, I was still paranoid. I used 3 pregnancy tests before the doctor came. All of them were negative. I let out a breath of relief. As long as it wasn't pregnancy, I thought, anything else was manageable. But the doctor's words knocked me off my feet. He said, you have 2 different pheromone types in your system. One is a low-grade one and one is a high-grade one. Did you go through a second presentation? I couldn't process what he was saying. As far as I knew, I'd presented late, but I'd definitely only presented once. But now, the report showed 2 kinds of pheromones. The doctor frowned, asking more questions. What are your heats like? I told him the truth. He shook his head. A normal heat shouldn't be painful. Are the suppressants you use very low quality? I found my old suppressants and gave them to him. I hadn't used them at all since I'd been with Johnny. The doctor's face changed. The second he saw the bottle, he took out a test kit, ran a check, and then looked at me. This isn't a suppressant. It's a representation agent. It's supposed to force a low-grade omega to present again as a high-grade one. But the process is agonizing, and the results are unstable. It's more likely to turn an omega into a defective. The side effects are so severe it's banned. Where did you get this? I understood all the words, but put together they made no sense. The memory of my parents giving me my first suppressants all those years ago suddenly became clear. The guilt on their faces. The way they couldn't meet my eyes. I thought sending me to Johnny's bed to save their failing company was the first and only disgusting thing they had ever done. I never imagined the trap had been set the day I presented at 16. Does Mr. Johnny know about this? The doctor's voice pulled me back. I instinctively shook my head. After a long silence, I managed to speak. Can I be the one to tell him? The doctor agreed. I just sat there in the dark, until the living room lights suddenly flashed on. Why are you sitting in the dark? The sky outside was black. I jolted and stood up. My expression must have been bad, because Johnny frowned. What's wrong? Was the news bad? I opened my mouth, tried to speak several times, but couldn't find the courage. Just then, Johnny's phone rang. I felt a wave of relief and told him to answer it. I gave myself a new deadline. As soon as this call was over, I would tell him everything. Whatever the consequences, I'd accept them. It sounded like one of his employees. The voice was clear in the quiet, empty room. Director Huang says he had his reasons, that he didn't mean to leak the company's secrets. He did it, he pays the price. Johnny's voice was cold, his expression flat. I don't care about the process. I only care about the result. He hung up. I was still frozen. Maybe our recent domestic life had made me forget who he really was. He seemed gentle, but he was decisive and ruthless. Johnny hates betrayal. Even if you didn't mean it. Even if you had your reasons. What were you about to tell me? Johnny's voice was deep, the iciness gone. Under the warm light, he even looked gentle and concerned, as if those ruthless words hadn't just come from his mouth. He saw how pale I was and frowned, leaning in as if to feel my forehead. I flinched, jerking away violently. Johnny's hand froze in mid-air. I forced a smile. I'm fine. You should get back to work. It was obviously unconvincing. He pulled out his phone to call the doctor, but I stopped him. I grabbed his sleeve, my hand shaking. Please don't ask him. Just give me a little more time. I'll tell you. Johnny stared at me for a moment, then finally nodded. That night, Leo came to find me with his pillow as usual. He was used to sleeping with me and Johnny now. As he tugged my shirt, trying to pull me to Johnny's room, I stroked his head. Leo, can you go sleep with your uncle by yourself tonight? I'm not feeling well. Leo nodded obediently. A little while later, I heard a knock on my door. I guessed who it was and quickly turned off the light. The knocking stopped, and then I heard Johnny's voice. I'm going to Switzerland tomorrow. He paused. I hope that when I get back, you'll be ready to tell me what's going on. Johnny left early the next morning. When I came downstairs, only Leo was on the sofa, watching TV. After I walked him to the school bus, I came back to turn off the TV. My hand slipped, and I hit a different button, changing the channel from cartoons to the news. The anchor was reporting on the latest breakthrough in treating pheromone disorders. A research team in Switzerland had developed an effective treatment. Switzerland, the place Johnny was going. He wasn't on a business trip. He was going to get his disorder cured. Once his pheromone disorder was fixed, I would be completely useless to him. How would he deal with a traitor like me? A pacifier who had been meticulously plotted and delivered to his side from the very beginning. My phone buzzed. A notification popped up. 1 day left until your 3-year anniversary. It was a countdown I'd set right before we got married. I'd gotten so comfortable, I'd almost forgotten. This marriage began as a dirty deal. I glanced at the bay window. The pot hose was lush and green, completely covering the glass, blocking out the sky. I thought now is the perfect time to end this transaction. Landed in Australia late at night. The wind was bitingly cold, and the sudden temperature change caught me off guard. A message from Sophia popped up. I found you a hot tour guide. Have fun. I pursed my lips, about to decline, when I felt something warm drape over my shoulders. It was a cashmere coat that smelled like mint. I spun around and met a pair of smiling eyes. You must be Evan. I'm your guide, Aaron. The man's lips were quirked in a smile that looked a little roguish. He didn't exactly look trustworthy. I took 2 steps back. My reaction seemed to amuse him. He glanced at the message I was typing on my phone and, in one swift motion, snatched it. Your friend Sophia paid me a lot. No refunds, no exchanges. As if to prove it, he immediately started a video call with her. In the end, I got in the car. The man didn't talk much, only pointing out a few landmarks, like a real guide. I relaxed. When we got to the inn, I thanked him and started to drag my suitcase inside. I walked and he followed. I was almost at the door when I finally couldn't take it anymore. I spun around. Why are you following me? He looked at me, then at the house. This is my house. You're staying with me. Didn't Sophia tell you? I'd been set up, but it was too late to find a hotel. I had to confirm one thing. You're not an alpha, are you? He got a weird look on his face, paused, then shook his head. No, I'm a beta. Well, that was fine then. It must have been peak tourist season because there wasn't a single vacant room on the entire street. So I stayed. Even though Aaron was a beta, he was a great cook and easy to get along with. Within a few days, we were pretty comfortable with each other. Because I wanted to cut all ties, I had blocked almost everyone. Except Sophia. I found out some things from her. About my parents. She said Johnny had bankrupted their company. It was fast and ruthless. He'd also left them with hundreds of millions in debt. A cold sweat broke out on my palms. I figured Johnny knew everything. The next step was to get revenge on me. The 8 o'clock bell chimed. My phone buzzed. It was an unknown number, but I knew it was Leo. In the letter I'd left him, I said he could call me secretly at 8 p.m. every night if he missed me. I composed myself and answered. The other end was silent, just heavy breathing and the sound of wind. Leo? I was confused and called his name again. Still no answer. Evan, who is it? Aaron asked. This was weird. I was about to hang up when the person on the other end finally spoke. The voice was deep, laced with a stormy rage. He said, Evan, open the door. My hand trembled, and I dropped the phone. Aaron walked over. Who was that? You look terrible. I was pale, clutching my phone. Took me a moment to answer. Nothing. Just a spam call. Aaron clearly didn't believe me and reached out to touch my face. The gesture was too intimate. I froze, about to push him away, when there was a loud bang. A bitter wind rushed in, carrying the cold. From outside, the door was wide open, and a familiar figure stood in the entryway. Johnny walked in. His eyes locked on Aaron's hand, then traveled up to meet mine. He had no expression, but it sent a shiver down my spine, and I instinctively recoiled. Johnny's pheromones flooded the room like a tidal wave. The dark cedarwood scent was churning with a terrifying fury, pressing down on my gland until it ached. Aaron, standing next to me, went pale, sweat beading on his forehead. Why are you running? He stared at me, his eyelashes dotted with snowflakes from outside. His voice was as cold as ice. The 3 years are up, so you think you can just walk away clean? My throat tightened. I wanted to run. The contract was only for 3 years. And what about me? Johnny strode forward and grabbed my wrist, his grip so tight I thought he'd break the bone. While I was in Switzerland, paying researchers to find a cure for your secondary presentation, you were packing your bags. My breath hitched. A vein throbbed in his temple, like he was barely holding himself together. The doctors said your presentation was unstable, that you needed long-term treatment. While I was getting my gene sequence matched for the safest possible therapy, you were booking tickets to Australia. I was stunned. I opened my mouth. You weren't there to cure your pheromone disorder? He shook his head. My disorder has been stable for a long time. Then why did you? I started, then my face flushed hot. Couldn't finish. Johnny pulled me into his arms. He still felt cold from outside. That's my fault. I was going to explain everything when I got back. I just didn't expect someone to be planning their escape. Johnny's chest rumbled, like he was laughing, but it was angry. I looked up and saw the bloodshot veins in his eyes. This man, who was always so calm and in control, looked like he hadn't slept in days. My confidence wavered, but I still felt wronged. I mumbled, I asked you. When he looked confused, I reminded him. That thing with your company executive. This time, Johnny really did laugh, but it was a sigh. Those are two different things. They have a preliminary plan for your gland treatment back in Switzerland. I looked up at him. The best method is a permanent mark. Evan, will you give me that chance? The day we flew back, the first snow of the season was falling. I waited at the airport for a long time for Aaron, wanting to say a final goodbye, but he never showed up. I had to board without seeing him. Right before takeoff, I got a text from an unknown number. The tone was familiar. Evan, safe travels. Your alpha is guarding you like a hawk. I'd only read half of it when my vision went black. Johnny had covered my eyes with his hand. You haven't been sleeping. Get some rest. When I woke up later, I couldn't find the message anywhere. The person happiest to see me home was Leo. The kid ran all the way to the neighborhood gate to meet me, completely out of breath. Just like before, Leo came to my room at night with his pillow. But now there was a tall shadow with him. I blocked the doorway, glaring at Johnny. No, go back to your own room. Johnny took 2 steps back. I thought he was giving up, but then he just called into the room. Leo. A second later, I had a small shadow tugging on my shirt, looking up at me with pitiful eyes. I looked at the big one, then at the little one and sighed. I gave up. In the spring, I got a postcard from Aaron. It was a picture from Rome. Johnny, who was pruning the pot hose on the windowsill, leaned over to look. He promptly took the postcard and stuck it in the very back of a drawer. You should contact him less. Jealous? I raised an eyebrow. He gently squeezed the gland on my neck, which now bore his permanent mark. Extremely. Leo ran in wearing his new school backpack, waving a test with a perfect score, demanding a reward. Johnny swung him up onto his shoulders and headed for the garage. Where do you want to go? Uncle's treat. Sunlight streamed through the gaps in the pot-hose leaves, scattering like gold on the floor. The air was thick with the smell of cedarwood and fresh grass, tangled together, no longer possible to tell whose comfort was whose. Like two parallel lines that had finally, at some turning point, intersected. From now on, they would travel the same path, never missing each other again.